All right, I believe I'm live. We'll do our usual tests. Welcome, everyone. So let's make sure my mic is working. So we'll start there. Um, yeah, hope you guys had fun doing this little competition. I think it's a cool idea to bring everyone together and get everyone excited about the potential of competition. Basically, that's what this is. All clear, says Karasama. Excellent. Let's do the audio test next. I didn't actually ensure that I set that up correctly. So let me know whether this audio here works. All right, so let me know whether we're good there. I agree completely with Sharp. Respect to everyone. There's a ton of great beats in there. And also, I also sort of want to make sure I mention that, like, we've all been, everything's perfect, excellent. All right, we'll get started soon. I'll wait a little bit for more people to come in case they submitted, but I think a lot of people are here that submitted that can make it. But yeah, we've all been together for a varying degree of months now, but we launched this in March, and since the launch and since I've seen a lot of you guys come in, it's been really it's made me happy to see how much a lot of you guys have progressed, um, especially with with these sessions. I think it's really helped because I've gone out of my way to actually listen to a lot of your guys' music, and I can sort of help point out certain ideas that you might want to include in your beats. And yeah, I think it's really come through um, with how much a lot of you guys have improved. And I'll even say a lot of you guys came in really, really good as well. And I would say that's makes my job a little bit easier if you guys already are excellent at making beats. But a lot of you guys have made a lot of progress as well in that time. So it's awesome to see that you guys are actually practicing, trying to get better and better, and the results are actually coming through. So that makes me happy. Be Real Beats, thank you for actually joining in. It's awesome that you guys are all here. But yeah, so with this competition, this is the first one that we've ever done. I don't know how often I'm going to do these, maybe twice or three times a year. I still got to figure out how often I want to start doing these competitions. Obviously, after this, we'll go back to our usual challenges. I'll probably set up the stipulations for the next challenge tomorrow or Tuesday, and then we'll go back to a regular schedule, and then eventually we'll announce the next competition. Well, thank you very much, Red Octane. But yeah, should I just get into it already? So the three different tiers or prizes I'm going to be handing out is just one's my personal favorite beat, just something that I personally liked. So my thinking with this is, I don't know whether this is going to make sense, but for a lot of producers, your job is sort of going to be to look at what the client wants and what they sort of typically go for and sort of cater to their tastes in a way. That's going to be a big determining factor in, I guess, if you do want to start working with artists. As sort of pure as it might seem, sort of puritanical, to just do whatever you want and let the chips fall where they may, that might be a good sort of approach when you're going into the public market. But if you're going one-on-one trying to work with specific artists, I would say that you do have to sort of tailor what you want to do and sort of marry your style with their own style and what they like. So that was sort of my idea with that prize pool. I think you guys, after we've sat down with a lot of the beat reviews that I've done, you guys sort of have an idea, also with watching my videos and sort of getting a sense of the types of beats that I make. Hopefully you guys have gotten an idea of like what it is I sort of lean towards, the sort of taste that I have, and that would be something that would be a consideration for you, that prize pool. Obviously, this is not something that I was explicit about, but I was hoping that no artist is ever gonna say, "Hey, I want you to make a beat that sounds exactly like how I sound now." Artists typically do say, I want something new, I want something fresh, but obviously there's always that idea of that's still gonna be within a sandbox that they are comfortable within, and so yeah, that's the idea behind that prize pool. The second prize pool is the most creative beat. So this was me being a little bit more technical and taking a step away from me having my own tastes influence the actual judging. And this is just a little bit more pure objectivity, as I hoped I could at least. Happy 808 Day, by the way, just like Grout said. So yeah, this prize pool, the most creative beat, sort of leans a little bit more towards the objectivity, and I tried to just sort of focus in on production ideas, production techniques, what the approach was for the actual beat, and like the small little details I tried to pick out and what I found to be most impressive. So I hope that makes sense with that one. And then finally, the last prize was the one-on-one. So that was the beat for me that I felt like there's a really cool idea. There's a nice intention behind the beat, but there was just a little bit of technique missing, or a certain underlying principles that might, if I could just sit one-on-one with a person, sort of explain them a little bit more clearly, that might go a long way and help produce a better result. And my idea with that one-on-one is, if the person who wins it is comfortable, so I can sort of record it, and then I'm going to post it up in the course so everyone can sort of hopefully get something out of that one-on-one, and maybe you can sort of see ideas that you can use for your own music in that session. So those are the three prize pools. I will say that this was pretty hard to pick which one won each and every one, because for every prize, I felt like there were a lot of beats that could have easily been my favorite, could have easily been the most impressive objectively, and also the ones that had like a good idea but sort of just need a little bit more fixing up. Like, there were just a lot of good beats, and this could have gone a different way easily. So I want to say, even if you don't hear your name called for a certain prize, I will say that don't feel as if that's because you fell short massively or anything. Everyone did a great job, and I do think that this could have gone and then another way easily. So just don't feel like I don't think that your beats are good because your names don't get called. Honestly, there's so many good beats here that is very impressive. So let me know in the chat whether we should probably start with the prizes being announced, or do you want me to be an annoying jerk and be like, ooh, let's wait until halfway through. I probably should just start it, and then we'll do the usual review of the beats. But yeah, let me know in the chat what you guys want me to do. If you want me to wait to announce the prize winners, or we should just start now. So I'll just announce like the first prize, we'll listen to their beat, and then I'll go on and on and on. Yeah, let me know in the chat. I did do some drinking last night, I will admit. That's why my voice is a little bit raspy right now. Red Octane, I listened to all of them and wouldn't be able to choose very well. Yeah, I felt the same way. Like, I listened to all the beats and I was like, well, this is going to be tough. So I sort of tried to do like a systematic approach. Gotta say, I was overly impressed with almost all I heard in this round. Yeah, absolutely. Eric wants me to be a jerk and wait. Yeah, I think we've waited long enough to be a jerk. Start with the prizes. I don't want to be a jerk. You guys are very nice people, so I want to treat you very nicely. So we'll start with the one-on-one session. The winner of the one-on-one session. This is a beat that I think, again, there were a lot of beats that had great ideas in them. So this one was the one that I felt had a great idea. Just small production techniques that I think I want to hone in on and sort of work with the producer to hopefully improve the end final result of the beat. And then in that time, they'll pick up on different concepts. And again, I'll post it in the course. So this one was Justina's beat right here. MXTR MOM. The beat here is Whitey's on the Moon. We'll take a listen to this beat, and congratulations to Justina.
This may be the last sunset we'll ever see. If we only had a little more time.
God, how many entire civilizations sputtered out with those words.
So that was the winner of the one-on-one session right there. Very cool concept to that beat, in my opinion. That's what I sort of took away from it. But yeah, I sort of don't want to get into the actual critique. I'd rather just wait until I can sit one-on-one with Justina, and we'll go through the ideas that I can help with, and hopefully we can make that beat a bit better, and I'll share with everyone else. But yeah, super cool beat, super cool concept. I really love, just like Karasama said, the sort of depth of the sounds, the different textures that were used. Just a really vocal sample making me feel like a madman, like I should write some Asylum type bars. Yeah, just a really idiosyncratic idea there. I just think that if I can just sit with the actual project and sort of push it and play with it, and I'll sort of show my process of what I would have done. So yeah, we'll share with everyone else once that comes out. So that will be fun. So congrats to Justina. If Justina is fine with the video being shared, I'd love to check it out. Yeah, I'm hoping that we can do that. Or if not, if I can just... hey, there's Justina. So yeah, Justina, you are the winner of the one-on-one session. So yeah, if just let me know whether you would be down with sending me the file, and then I'm going to sit through and sort of work through it, and then we'll do a one-on-one session. I'll sort of show you my thinking and the different things that I did with your beat. And if you're cool with me sharing it for the rest of the course members, yeah, that'd be great. So that was the one-on-one prize there. So here we go. That's the winner of that. We'll put that in red. The next one, the D16 package. So this is the beat that I felt was very creative, a lot of great production techniques in this beat. Honestly, there were a few I was deliberating between. So again, just because your name doesn't get called doesn't mean that you were far behind. I just think this one had a little bit more small detail within it that really pushed it to the next level. And there's a lot of impressive techniques done, but I'll get into what I actually thought was very impressive after I play it. Much love, can't wait to hear the updated version. Hopefully I can actually do a good job of, well, if I end up making it worse, then Justina should be the new teacher if I end up making it worse. The winner of this prize is DJ Margie. So let's listen to Margie's beat here. Yeah.
Fire emergency.
So that was DJ Margie's beat right there. Let's see what you guys are saying. Yeah, a lot of people were very impressed with this beat. Lots of ear candy. That's a great point. The dynamics of this beat are superb, says Karasama. Yeah, so my takeaway with this beat, just so much attention to detail with this beat, which was great. The beat was sort of comprised of many different smaller sounds. It sounds like a lot of compiling of different textures to create the bass line of the beat. And then throughout the beat, with the arrangement, that was just like a whole different part of the beat that just added so much to the original idea. The arranging was done in such a great way because throughout it wasn't as if I felt like there's a section where the switch up happened and things became unbalanced. The textures that we're always bringing are sort of were brought in and out throughout the beat. They always worked. There was always a consideration of those spaces that I always talk about and make sure everything is feeling full. And there's also a great emphasis put on the idea that I talked about, where if you want to create switch ups, you sort of want to keep certain elements consistent and you sort of want to take other elements and switch them up. You don't really want to do everything at once because that's when the beat gets disjointed when you sort of try to arrange. And I think that was very, very well done with Margie's beat. Margie is in here, I believe. But yeah, just great attention to detail, great. Just like Karasama said, the dynamics of the beat were great. Just everything was pretty much on point. I can't really pick out something that I thought was flawed with that beat. It just feels like a lot of attention was put into it, and it really does show. So great job to Margie. Once again, that one was a tough one to sort of decide because a lot of your guys' beats, I could tell, did have a lot of, in the same way, a lot of care and a lot of small details put in, a lot of great production techniques as well. But I think, just in my opinion, with this beat here, just eked it out. So yeah, worked hard on it, just like Margie says. It does show Margie, so very well done with this beat. So yeah, you'll be getting some free D16 plugins that you can use for your future beats. So that's exciting. So the last and final prize was the 300 Smackers. So this was just my personal favorite beat. I didn't want to overthink this one. It's just whichever one I felt I liked the most. And just like I said, for those of you that want to start producing for artists, that's sort of what you sort of need to consider. You want to think about, what does this artist sort of gravitate towards? What types of sounds? What types of moods and feelings? And that's basically what I decided this beat on. And again, there were a lot of great beats, so if your name doesn't get called out, it's not because I thought it was bad. Everyone should be proud of what they created here because just a lot of great work. So this one, let's highlight Margie here. Margie will be in yellow. Whoops. So with this one here, the winner of the 300 Smackers is Sharp Vision, Kahari, Mr. Sharp, with a beat right here. Let's take a listen. Huh. was my what's playing right now. So yeah, that was my favorite beat. I think in the comments here, it's a great synopsis of why. Hypnotic, enticing, evil. Great stuff, said Coolant Beats. And that's why it was my personal favorite too. That's sort of what I like to gravitate towards. And yeah, that's why Sharp Vision has done it. A rapper would kill this. Great use of dissonance, says Grizzle. I love that pitch bend on the 808 tail. Yeah, and I think there's a lot of great work done in terms of the arrangement as well. It wasn't just as if the beat sort of dropped the drums and that was the hook. I think Sharp Vision did a great job of adding layers and really pushing themselves to sort of make the beat feel a bit more full. The idea itself is very dark and dissonant, and that's why I enjoyed it. That was my personal favorite beat. Once again, though, guys, I want to keep reiterating. Really, really great work done on everyone's part. Yeah, just like this is probably only going to get harder and harder. The next competition, I'll probably do something similar. If you guys have any ideas on like other prize structures that you want to see, let me know. But yeah, I think well done to all the winners. Had a blast with this. So many great beats. I learned a lot listening to everyone's beats. So yeah, that's part of my intention with this as well. I know a lot of the producer or sort of art community in general is always just like, hey, there's always room for everyone. But at the end of the day, again, if you're trying to become an actual producer, this is a competition. You sort of do have to beat out other producers if you want to get those album placements, because there's only so many songs on an album. So the idea of actually creating a competition and actually having you guys feel like, you know, there is a structure to this, and there is, you know, it's the nature of competition. People are going to win, other people are going to lose, but obviously that's the way the real world works. So I sort of, part of this does obviously suck on my end, because I would love to make everyone happy. And for you guys that weren't winners this time around, obviously there's going to be more opportunities in the future. But yeah, I know this might be a little bit rough, and not the outcome that you obviously wanted. But I think that sort of, it's hard on me to sort of pick 3 winners, because that means there's 22 people that didn't win. But yeah, that's sort of something that I also do think is important to instill, that we can't sit here and be like, hey, kumbaya, let's all hold hands, and there's enough room for everyone, there's enough opportunity for everyone. I sort of don't believe that would be doing you guys a favor. It is important to understand that once you get out there and you sort of do want to pursue this as a sort of, whatever you do actually in life, whatever you try to pursue, it is a competition. If you interview for a job, you're in competition with the other candidates. And so I think that's sort of what I also wanted to do with this. With our usual sort of bi-weekly challenges, I can just sit there and sort of critique, but here I sort of did have to push you guys to sort of rank each person. And so, yeah, that's what this, I'm just blabbing on at this point, so I'll just shut up. We'll go on to the other beats, and I'll sort of do my typical critiques at this point. But once again, Caesar, how many beats did I miss? You missed all 3 winners. So you can see I highlighted the 3 here. We had Margie, Justina, and Kahari. So yeah. Next time we will, maybe I'll do the exact same setup. Let me know what you guys think in terms of different prize structures and whatnot. But congrats to everyone. Good job, because you guys, just like I said, so much progress has been made. It's been really happy for me to see you guys just get better and better every single time I listen to your beats. So in that vein, I would like to spotlight, you know what, maybe next one prize pool that I think I might do next time is like the most progress. That might be a bit tough because I sort of do need to figure out where you guys were and where you are. But I think with this go around, there was a lot of progress made by two individuals from where their beats were when they first joined the program to what they submitted here. The first one is Eric B. So let's take a listen to Eric's beat here. Whoa, not again. There we go. So yeah, that was Eric's beat there, and I'm not sure if any of you guys remember one of his earlier beats. I was just thinking back to when the first memory I had of Eric's beat. It was a very like a rough idea. The drums were sort of all over the place. It was just like bass guitar playing only, and it seemed like he had a little bit of a tough time understanding like how to put different sounds together, how to actually make a sort of comprehensive idea. But a lot of progress has been made by Eric, is what I would say listening to this beat. It sounds like he's getting a better sense of how to put a core idea together. And the beat, obviously, it's like a very idiosyncratic sound that he used. And with the arrangement there, he did have switch-ups and whatnot. So yeah, I think from where he started to where he is now, I felt like this one really jumped out to me as a lot of progress made, because initially when I first heard his beat, it did feel like he did have a tough time putting sounds together and getting his ideas to actually come together like he wanted to. Because a lot of you guys, I'll be perfectly honest, when you guys came in, a lot of you guys were already very knowledgeable and very educated with how to put music together. And so my job for those people is just like show them the smaller details and the smaller ideas, the smaller concepts. But with Eric, it was he's a lot earlier on in his sort of progress, and so the strides that he made just seem a lot larger. So Eric was one, and the other one was Lissetti. So if you guys remember my video that I made in like January about like the 5 red flags that most producers make with their beats, I sort of just picked out a few beats that I thought were kind of rough, and pointed out different reasons why, and Lissetti's was one of them. But yeah, the progress that Lissetti's made with their beat here has also been very notable in my opinion as well. So that's Lassetti's beat there, and yeah, like I mentioned, I remember when they first joined the program, Lassetti's beats, a lot of the elements are always very disconnected, and the drum patterns were sort of all over the place, and the individual sounds were fine, but what would often happen with Lassetti's beats were like the one melody would be doing one thing, the chord progression underneath would be doing something different, and like the different elements would just be very detached from one another. And I always tell Lassetti, sort of simplify your ideas, try to just be a little bit more in the pocket. I know it might not feel as creatively fulfilling at the beginning when you sort of just do something that's very straightforward, but it's really important to understand the fundamental principles of beat making and then build upon that, rather than just sort of being very avant-garde and very loose and not have any sort of fundamental understanding of what a good beat is. And that's exactly what this beat sort of shows me, that Lassetti does now have an understanding of how to put a beat together. And like the ideas within this beat are all very cohesive. The drum patterns, the different melodies, everything's sort of working together instead of just doing their own thing. And the music's just much better for it. So that's something that's definitely been very awesome to see with Lassetti's beats. And yeah, I agree with Karasama. Like, that's what matters most, is that you're better than where you were yesterday. That's always the goal. Just inch forward every single day. Push yourself to do different things every single day. Learn something new. And within music and outside of music as well. That's always been something that I've believed in. So yeah, that's what matters most. And it seems to me, after listening to all your guys' beats, you guys are all definitely learning and getting more and more skilled by the day, which is excellent. So that makes me happy to see. So it's been 45 minutes. We'll just go through some additional beats here. Is there a way to sort of randomize this? Does Excel have like a randomizing function? Random number between 0. Wait, what? A rand between 0 and 25. Ooh, I just learned something new today. See, guys, you learn something new every single day. Now I can just sort this, and we'll go in order, and this will be very fair for everyone. Tools, A to Z. What the? Huh? Tools, A to Z. What's going on here? Oh, wait. I think I know what's going on. I need to paste values, and now I'll sort A to Z. What? This thing's not even working. Oh, I thought it'd be exclusive. Why is there like multiple? I guess it's completely random. Guys, I'm a bonehead. Let's see if there's another one here. Random. A random number between 0 inclusive and... All right, I'm a complete idiot. I don't know what I'm doing. So let's just jump around randomly here. Let's start with J Trot's beat. Take a listen. So I'll go do my normal critique with these beats now. So that was Jake Trotter right there. So Jake was one of the original first 3 members when I was doing my my sort of pre-launch testing. And yeah, I think Jake is also another one who's made a lot of progress in that time. It just seems like Jake's having a better and better understanding of how to piece together a full sounding beat. I remember the first initial beats that I heard of his, it felt like certain pockets were a little bit missing, and the beat never quite felt as full. But I feel like with this beat here, he did a great job of using all the sounds, and the sounds all sat in the required spaces. The beat actually felt very full and very complete, which was great. So Margie says she liked the underlying melody, which is awesome. Grout says 808 is off. It's hard to tell with the Luger 808. So you can actually hear, that's pretty amazing, Grout. You know what 808's being used here. And also Grout. I was hoping to see Grout's beat in this competition, but maybe Grout's been having a busy summer. But yeah, I think with Jake's beat here, he's made a lot of progress in his time in the program, which makes me happy to see. With this beat in particular, I would sort of agree with Grout. One of the things that sort of did stick out to me was the 808 during the hook. When you went to that higher note, I'm not sure whether the 808 itself is off or whether it's just not necessarily an 808 that sounds good when it's repitched, because the sort of main note that was played with the 808 sounded fine. But as soon as it got pitched up, that's when things sort of felt a bit off to me. I'm not sure whether that's just my new speaker setup and it's just not sort of playing back. I do notice that there's a weird pocket in frequencies that sound a lot louder in this room for some reason. But regardless, the other thing with this beat was that the synth felt a bit stock sounding. So I think the underlying piano that was played was great. And that was such a great texture that was used. It felt very rich and very authentic, but that sort of synth that's set on top, that I felt could have used a little bit more work and be made to sound a little bit more integrated with the beat, because it sort of felt like with the acoustic piano, because of how much reverb and just how realistic it felt, it's sort of having a sort of very stock sounding, bright synth set on top. The sort of marrying of those two sort of didn't necessarily work. It's just a little context thing where you just have a very acoustic sounding, real sounding texture on one end, and then you very sharp, bright digital synthy stock sound. And so those sort of didn't come together as I sort of would have liked. But very solid idea overall, and very well put together beat by the Trotman himself. Grout says, I had family in from out of state this month. For a whole month? I need my alone space, Grout. I'd be like, get out of here. So the next beat that we'll take a listen to, a little Soju Moju here. So that was Soju Moju's beat. I actually was hoping for another video in the course that I want to make. Soju Moju's beat is a great example of this one concept that I was thinking about. When I first started making beats, like I always felt like my beats were sort of missing one sound or sort of one element that always made them feel a little bit more hollow, a little bit more um, a little bit like less full than I would have hoped when I listened to other people's beats. They always felt a little bit more rich, a little bit more full, and I never really understood why. But I think one thing that really jumped out to me eventually um, was the idea of low mids. So this is sort of something that also appears in this beat. So I sort of want, if Soju Moju's in here, I am hoping that you can send me this beat and I can sort of just play around with it, so I can make a video on it because I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of people. But let me just rewind here. So Margie says, nice sound selection. This is smooth as hell. The bridge to the sax was dope. I like the perks and the panning of the open hi-hats. So yeah, with this beat, I think it's a great idea. I love the direction of the beat and the aesthetic choices that were made in terms of the sound selection. It's a very like cool, what's the genre I'm trying to think? It reminds me of a lot of like Japanese OSTs when I used to sample a lot of like what the hell's that show called that a lot of people like, Cowboy Bebop, like that sort of feeling towards like a very smooth jazz, Japanese jazz type of thing. You did an amazing job of playing that sax. That was very lush and just felt very real. I'm not sure whether you programmed that. Oh, gracious Jin, you're here. I'm not sure whether you programmed that or you played the sax itself, but like that was just a great job. And actually, it sounded like a legit saxophone player playing. So that was just amazing work done in terms of getting that texture to fit with this beat. So beautiful work there. But as I was alluding to earlier, I think one thing is that with the organ that you use to build the chord progression underneath, it was missing that exact space that I was talking about, the lower mids. So I'm not sure whether you used a filter on that sound or whether the sound itself just came a little bit more thin, but there's probably a frequency space that sits right underneath where that sound sat in your beat, that if you just sort of boosted that up a tiny bit, your beat would end up sounding a lot more full and robust. It's a little bit hard to show you guys this without an actual example, which is exactly why I'm hoping gracious Jin here will be gracious enough to send me that beat so I can sort of do a video and I'll include it in the course so I can show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. But for me, that's exactly a problem that I had for a long time with my beats, and it always felt like, hey, why is this beat that I'm making here feel incomplete no matter how many sounds I add into it? And a lot of the times it's just that one narrow frequency space that if you do a good job of paying attention and filling it, your beats will end up sounding a lot more full. So again, I'm thinking of hopefully getting Soju Moju's beat so I can use that as an example. Another thing I'll say with the beat is Chaz said the drums are a bit all over. I think with the sort of direction of this beat, it sort of felt a bit jazzy, but I noticed that the drums that were used here were very acoustic sounding. So I noticed that with the drum pattern, there was a very consistent feeling to the velocity at times. So just a small little detail. If you use like acoustic drums and they end up sounding very like robotic and stiff, obviously one of the small details that you'll sort of need to pay attention to is the velocity and also the timing. So if everything's perfectly quantized and perfectly level, it's gonna really stick out, because obviously if you're trying to use acoustic drums and have it sound like an acoustic drum set, an acoustic drum player will not be able to play that robotically. That's a sort of aesthetic that does work a little bit better with trap beats and like very digital synthy types of beats. But yeah, if you're going to use acoustic drums, you might want to pay a little bit more attention to playing around with things like velocity. Should I send it via email? Yes, please. The FLP if you could. And the stems of each sound, that would work. Eric B, sorry, rough day at work. I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully everything's going well for you. Eric, I played your beat before, and yeah, I mentioned to everyone else, I DM'd you on the side. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that your beat, you've made a lot of progress in the few months we all listened to your beat, and a lot of people really enjoyed listening to it. So, yeah, I'm just wanted to point out to everyone that you just made a lot of huge strides since you've been here. So, kudos to you, Eric. Let's listen to Young Marjar's beat next.
You okay? Don't worry. We got into this mess. We can get out of it.
All right, that was Marjar's beat there. Let's put you in, highlight you there. Great work on the drums, love it. The drum groove is great. This is another of my favorites. Great work. Love the gates on the bridge. As a drummer, I'd suggest if you use acoustic drums, trying to record with quantization off and then see if any of the other elements need to be nudged. That's great advice there from Karasama, the live drummer himself. I like this one. It says, Grout, this beat's dope. The 808's hard hitting. So yeah, I think with this beat as well, this is one of another contender for one of the prize pools. I love the feeling of this beat. The core idea was definitely there. The sort of harp that was built to, I don't know if it's a harp or a plucked string sound. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, it's a very great core idea. The sound itself sat in a very great space. You had the sort of ethereal, moody sounding plucked string instrument there, and the drums were very hard hitting. So that was also great. So yeah, I said the core idea of this beat was phenomenal and on point. The thing that sort of fell short for me with this beat was the arrangement. So I feel like I would have liked for this beat to sort of push the arrangement a little bit more. The only thing that I really heard was a switch up where maybe they're a little bit more 808 rolls and 808s sort of going crazy at certain points. And you also did have the section of the beat where you had the sort of stuttering and the gating effect with maybe the shaper box or gross beat preset type of thing. But I would have liked to hear you sort of push the idea a little bit more, start playing around with layering and trying to introduce more sounds to build out, or less sounds at times to build out the different parts of your beat. So a lot of the things that I mentioned in the arrangement section of the course, sort of play around with those 5 different concepts that you can play around with when it comes to arranging, and sort of push the beat to sort of be a little bit more dynamic and change throughout. Obviously, you don't want like an entirely different beat by the end, but you sort of want to be able to have that skill set in your toolbox of being able to add sounds, take away sounds, substitute sounds. So yeah, I think that's the one thing that I would say was sort of missing in this beat. Like I said, the core idea is phenomenal. I really love the elements that were used. It was the perfect amount for the core idea. I think when it comes to the different sections of the beat, though, that's when I would have liked to see Marjar just push it a little bit more and create a little bit more of a robust beat in that regard. So hopefully that makes sense. Let us listen to Coolant Beats next. All right, that was Coolant Beats beat there. That's a very upsetting visual, but I liked it, just like Eric. Nice groove, says Margie. Marjar, thanks for the advice. Arrangement is one of my biggest struggles. I'll even say for me, luckily I got to work on that video game soundtrack where I was sort of forced to create beats that had like different segments and different arrangements throughout like a 3-minute loop. So that really forced me to learn a lot about arrangement. But yeah, like that was also a very big struggle for me very early on, and it took me being forced to like push myself to extremes to really figure out how to have beats change up and morph and evolve while keeping things very sort of similar. So yeah, just force yourself to keep at it, follow the sort of guideline and the principles in the course of those 5 different elements that you can think about when it comes to the arrangement switch ups that you can make, and the sort of differentiating elements. That to me, whenever I get stuck, I'll even go back to thinking about what it is I can sort of do and the 5 different approaches that I can take. So hopefully that's something that sort of can help you out as well. I do want to do more sections in the course on arranging for sure. So that's something else that will be coming up also. Took me a second to notice the eyes were moving. The sounds weren't glued together much. Maybe the synth sounded a bit stock type. That's exactly what I wrote down. But the depth was missing, maybe some reverb. So yeah, with this beat, I think Coolant beats, you wanted to create a very, I think there's like a Denzel Curry type of beat. The idea that you had here, the direction that you took it was very on point. It did feel very aggressive and very tough sounding, which was awesome. I really love aggressive types of beats, so this was very much in my domain. I think you did a great job of the sort of smaller surrounding elements in the beat, and the sort of reverby sound that you chose to put in the back of the beat I thought was very like eerie, and it felt like it fit very well with the theme of the beat. But to Karasama's point, the one issue I would say that really brought this beat, or sort of held this beat back from what it could be, that sort of central sound that you chose as the main focus of the beat, it didn't necessarily sit in the best spot in terms of the frequency space from what I could hear. So you had your 808 sitting at the very low end, and then you had that sort of stocky sounding synth that was sitting a very far distance, was very high up in the frequency spectrum. I think even, I'm not sure how the original sound, how robust it was, but if you just took an EQ and you maybe carved off some of the high end and you boosted some of the lower parts of that sound, that might be enough to make the beat feel full, or you just might need to choose an entirely different sound that sits somewhere in the lower frequency range, because that sound was a bit piercing because it sat in a high frequency range, especially when you decide to pitch it up during the switch up. That sort of really made the sort of issue stand out even more. And the sound itself was a bit stock sounding, just like Karasama mentioned. So maybe just going to push the sound a bit more in terms of how you can manipulate it. It did sound maybe like you had a bit of bit crushing on it, but I think the bigger problem was that the sound itself just didn't necessarily sit in the right space. So if you moved it or you chose something that sat in a lower space, I think this beat could really come together. This is yet another example actually of what I was talking about with Soju Moju's beat. So actually, if you would like, maybe this could be yet another example of this exact same thing. So if you want to send me the stems of this beat, actually, that might be a good idea. Coolant, I think you're in here. So yeah, like I said, you had a great idea. You want to create an aggressive beat. I think you did it really well. It's just that one sound and where it sat really held the beat back from what it could be. So yeah, the light in the corner behind me is a little annoying. Why? What's it doing? Is it? Oh yeah, that is kind of bright and annoying. So let me get in the way of it, and let me sit with good posture too, guys. That's important. Jake just pulled up to work, so I gotta run. Can't wait for the next challenge. It was nice having you, Jakey boy. So yeah, that was Coolant Beats beat there. Let's get you shaded. Let us move on. What happened to Smooth's beat? I hope they didn't accidentally forget or something. They said they used my drum, but there's no beat here. Maybe they didn't finish it in time. I want to move on to Vito's beat. Here we go. Here's young Vito.
Don't forget to remember, but you know what I mean.
right, that was Young Vito's beat there, the Wu-Tang Clan type beat, Return of the Golden City. The kick is slightly clipping, or is it the 808 transient clashing? Like this beat in the visual, the 808 is a bit too overwhelming for Margie's taste, but other than that, nice. Like the groove, epic sounding melody. The only thing missing was Raekwon and Ghostface. Very cool, very well balanced. Feel a little Wu-Tang. The kick and the 8 aren't aligned together. Oh, so yeah, that's I actually didn't even pick up on that. So great job, Karasama. This is why I love having you guys in the chat, because you pick up on the things that I sometimes miss. So once you did type that in the chat, I sort of did pay attention. I was like, oh yeah, the kick, it sounded like it came a bit late. And since it was a very colored kick, it had a lot of texture on it. It really stood out when the 808 hit and the kick sort of delayed and hit right a little bit after. Usually if it's acoustic bass, then sometimes not aligned, I think it's okay. So in hard hitting 808, it's better to keep them aligned together for the impact that they make. The vibe was splendid, nice background selection. So yeah, my takeaway with this beat, the drum programming was great. The sounds sort of integrated with the sample very well in terms of the actual drum selection. This was a very, obviously it says a 90s boom bap type of beat. And the drums that were chosen here did fit into that aesthetic. I think Vito did a great job with the layering as well. You can notice at one point of the beat, he played his own piano on top, and that's always very difficult to do with a sample. And that's something that you and I struggle with to this day. It takes me a long time to find a sound that always feels like the sound feels detached from the sample at times, but and you sort of can sit there for a very long time until you find the right sound that actually does integrate with the sample. And I think Vito did a great job of finding that exact perfect piano that sat with that sample very well. I would say for a couple things. So the beat idea was a 90s boom bap beat. Typically an 808 like that, used in that fashion, wouldn't be something that you'd see, but nonetheless, if Vito's going for a little bit more of an avant-garde type of thing and sort of wants to push the genre, fair enough. I'm not going to say don't ever use 808s for a boom bap beat. Do whatever you want. At the end of the day, I'm obviously not here to limit your creativity. In terms of the technical aspects, I would say that I think the sample itself was peeled back a bit too much. I think if you, with where the sample sat in the beat, it did feel like there was a space missing once again in that lower range. So if you just peel back how much of the sample was filtered, that might help the beat feel a little bit more full, because for me, it just felt a tiny bit on the side of thin, because the high end as well as a little bit of the low end was sort of missing with the sample. So you can sort of hear in the sample, there's an instrument in the very low end that I think if Vito kept in a tiny bit more, the beat would have felt a little bit more full. But I would say that would depend on where the artist's vocals sat also. So it's a little bit nitpicky. I'm not sure whether that would actually help or not. That's just something that jumped out to me. But yeah, like I said, great job with the drum programming. I always love sampled beats, and I'm planning on coming out with a video within the month, I think, on sampling, so hopefully you guys enjoy that. But yeah, with this beat, cool job with the drum work, and also great job with that integrating the sound within the sample, because that's really hard to do. And you did it very well. So let's go with Young Karasama's beat. Let's take a listen. This was also, from what I remember, a great beat. right, that was Karasama's beat there. Excellent beat. This one was fire. This one's nice. Great epic beat. I really like this beat. This one was one of my favorites of Caesar. Dope, says Moha. Very interesting sound selection to incorporate these influences. Great drums, great song progression. Yeah, everyone loved this beat, myself included. This was definitely also a contender for one of the prize pools. Yeah, I love the verse section of this beat was probably my favorite because of the small arrangement techniques that Karasama used. So for instance, the slow introduction of that main sound, that sort of main arpeggiating sound, that was great. He sort of sounded like a low pass filter and he sort of peeled it back, and maybe it's just volume control as well to introduce that sound throughout the verse. So this is something that I mentioned in the arranging video on my YouTube, and also in my course, of instead of having like a very definite start and end time for certain layers, the idea of introducing sounds that come in and out through a longer period of time, that's a great way of making your arrangement sound a lot more sort of dynamic and not as amateur. That's like a very pro move. And it sounds like Karasama really did a great job of executing that idea with this beat. And I also love the bridge of this beat where you sort of had a nice little reversal of instrumentation. That was also an excellent technique. That was a proper bridge. So yeah, like there's not really much to critique this beat on in terms of its flaws or anything. This is a very well produced beat. And like I said, this was one of the contenders. One thing I would say is that on the hook, it did feel a tiny bit busy for me once you did include that flute with the beat, especially with how colored the drums are. You used a little bit more of an acoustic sounding drum set instead of like a typical 808 trappy type of thing. Obviously, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but with the more dense drums as well as all the layers coming in, I think the perfect balance was during the verse, but with the hook, obviously you do want to make it a little bit more larger, and I think you did a great job of putting everything together. It's just, I think if you just peeled back that flute a tiny bit, even if you just reduced how much frequencies that sound has, maybe push it back a bit into the beat, maybe, again, this is just me being very nitpicky at this point, maybe experiment with that, but honestly, I could see this going either way, where if someone said, that's perfect, I wouldn't be able to be like, no, you're wrong. Obviously, this is a little bit more subjective, and what the artist would want would be dependent on how they could use this beat. So yeah, I would say great job to Karasama. A lot of flawless production in this beat. So Karasama was also one of the original members of the course, and he's crushing it with these beats. Let's listen to the swelly swell man himself, Eric. Whoa, I remember this one. All right, that was the swelly swell beat. The textures are great, but a bit too dissonant for my taste, says Ski. The piano has some really harsh frequencies on the high frequencies, perhaps. The dissonance is okay in my opinion for a little while, but then you need to resolve it somewhere, says Margie. I feel like it would have been okay if the pad in the background were perfectly tuned in. I feel like the lows are missing by some amount. So yeah, I think a lot of you guys are hitting the nail on the head with my takeaway with this beat as well. I don't know if it was the piano or the hi-hat, but it was very piercing on my end as well. I think a big part of the reason why the beat sort of didn't really come together, I think I understood what Swelly was going for with this beat, but this is sort of similar to the tutorial that I made on The Alchemist, where I talked about the production technique of having like a pad or a synth or a drone that's constant throughout the background, and then you use other elements to sort of play around that the chord that's playing, and you sort of use that instrument, the other instruments that you build, as the sort of core idea to build out the musical component of the beat. I sort of think that's what Swelly was going for here, but I think there were a couple of issues. For one, the balancing was a bit off in that the pad that he used here was very, very prominent, very forward in the beat, and the sound that he used to sort of create the sort of musical driving force of the beat was that piano, which had a lot of reverb on it, and it was very secondary in the beat, and so it didn't really do a good job of driving the beat forward. It was largely the big huge pad that felt like it was the POI of the beat, when that probably should have been a little bit more secondary to the other elements in the beat, so in order to create a better balance. So that was one thing. Say Chaz is too much on the high end, and Karasam also mentioned, yeah, I think most of the sounds sat in a high frequency range, and once again, I do really think this video that I'm thinking about including upcoming is going to be very beneficial for you guys, because that low mid space is very, very important. So you're talking about the subby space. I think that's also something that is a little bit missing, but also there are plenty of songs that sort of do get away with just having a kick drum and not having a very prominent subby bass. But nonetheless, if you do that, you need some very like thick, dense chords. Like a lot of the times when you hear a beat that uses Fender Rhodes, that just has a very thick presence down there in that lower mid, you can still get away with making a beat feel full. But again, this beat had like very little in that space also. So I think that also contributed to why this beat didn't really come together. And also for you guys that are probably a little bit more in tune with music theory, you guys talked about dissonance. So I do agree that piano melody that was built didn't really feel like it resolved, and that's also contributed to why I didn't necessarily feel that it helped contribute to become like the driving force of the beat, because musically speaking, it doesn't really do its job, because it did probably feel a little bit too dissonant, and that's why it sort of felt like it was a bit secondary, because yeah, it was just not a musical driving force. So that's probably part of the reason why this beat didn't really feel musical overall. Yeah, I understood what Swelly was going for there, but I think it was just a miss of a few techniques and a few sort of core principles to go back into the course about wanting to make sure you fill all the required spaces with the beat. So make sure you do that first and foremost, because if you build on top of a very incomplete structure, it's just not going to come together no matter what you do. So let's go to Harmiter's beat here.
Music. So what?
what's happening right now. What's happening? Let's wait here. I have no idea whether I am online. Oh, God says I'm back. All right, that was strange. I've never seen that happen before. So let's do this again.
Music. Music. So what? Music. So what? Music. So what?
All right, that was Eric's beat there, Young Harmiter. Is your Ethernet cord gets unplugged? I have no idea what happened there. I haven't seen that issue before. That was Fire Says Sharp. Harmiter beat is great, very tasteful. I'm loving those drum breaks, says Karasama. Great beat, says Grout. Great one, Visionary. So yeah, everyone loves this beat. Very, very well put together beat. This is also another beat that was definitely a contender for one of the prize pools. Yeah, you could hear the level of detail within the beat, and I think Harmiter did a great job in filling up all the necessary spaces. He kept the beat musical. He had a lot of small attention to detail once again. Yeah, through and through, very great job in terms of a very solid, great sounding beat that was very well put together. Amazing groove, love this one for sure. Kind of jazzy, says Ski. Yeah, I think Harmiter is one of the... I feel like every single time I listen to a Harmiter beat, he always does a great job with his production. So Eric, you do a great job with your beats. Yeah, I don't really have too much to say in terms of what I could critique here. I think one thing that somewhat jumped out to me, if again I'm getting into the nitpicky type of area here, this is going to be really subjective, but I'm not sure whether the beat had a very POI that jumped out to me. So you had these sort of guitar chops, and I think that was definitely a great texture to use. I don't know, it just didn't jump out to me as much as, like, I remember the last beat that you submitted, even the beat from 2 competitions ago, like, you have a great sense of, like, really putting your ideas out there and being very audacious with your ideas. And this beat felt a little bit more reserved than what I was expecting from your beats. But again, that's not anything that's objectively an issue. It was a very, very well put together beat. Obviously the chat all loved it. This was just more so me just having the expectation of you being more audacious, and this idea was a little bit more reserved, and to me at least, but I don't want you to take that as a critique by any means. This is purely subjective, and it's just a very well put together beat that everyone loves. That was just my small little takeaway with this beat. One of my favorite things about a lot of Harmiter's beat is just how balls to the wall and how audacious he is with his beats, so I want to encourage that out of his production. So kudos to Harmiter. So we'll do a few more beats. I'm losing my voice even worse now, and I have to go to a dinner party in a few hours, so I need to retain any sense of communication I have. All right, that was Netta's beat there, cinematic beat called Power. That was a very, very impressive beat to me because, like you guys have heard me say before, it's just very, very difficult. Oh, Netta's in here. Very, very difficult to program strings in a way that actually sound good and actually fit. And I think with Netta's beat here, extremely well done. This was a beat that was very different than all the other beats. They went a completely different direction, and I want to say well done for sure. I think Netta's only they haven't been submitting with every single competition, but from what I remember with Netta's older beats, they have a lot of skill here. So yeah, look, a lot of you guys are saying very super cinematic. Voices are really nice in the background. Love the wet perks. I feel like the laid back drums give a very chill vibe. Sounds like MGS music. You mean Metal Gear Solid? This one's one of the most relaxing beats I heard in a while. Man, I can imagine the difficulties you had to go to. Yeah, I mean, you're hearing it. This was definitely also a very big contender. So yeah, like skill shown on that front was very, very impressive to me. I think Ned is doing stuff here that I would probably even struggle with in terms of getting everything to sound cohesive, in terms of using the sort of string patches. For me, I think a lot of the times you sort of need to make sure you work with good sounds. But yeah, I think Netta shows a very good grasp of how to put a beat together with this one. I think it's hard to sort of judge this on what the intention is, because I think Chaz points out something really interesting. This would do a good job of being something that feels like it belongs in a sort of movie or something a little bit more cinematic. Obviously, it's called a cinematic beat. I think one thing that I found difficult when I tried to take this approach with the beat is that when you use consistent sounds throughout your beat that are very large, like the strings in this beat, I mean, this beat obviously feels cinematic for a reason, because everything's very large and very sort of standalone. It feels very full. And whenever I used to make beats like this, it was very hard for artists to use, because they would often feel, I would assume at least, that there was very little space for them to actually try to do anything. So that's one thing I want to point out to Netta that you might want to consider. Obviously, if this is meant for like TV or movies, this is a great beat. But if you're thinking about working with artists, you sort of do want to consider the idea of space and how they're going to be able to fit in. Another thing I would say is the drums. I think you did a very smart thing in making the actual pattern itself very minimal. So a lot of the people said this is a very chilled and laid back drum pattern. I think that's perfect for what you did, because the other instrumentation is very large and takes up a lot of space. You probably don't want to come up with a crazy over the top drum pattern, because the beat would sound very, very congested at that point. I do think the drums themselves were a bit low in volume. So bringing them up a tiny bit, maybe adding some Camel Crusher to that snare and play around with, you sort of do want it to get loud, but obviously you do want to play within the aesthetic of this beat. So maybe adding a little bit of reverb onto that snare. So you do create some depth, and you want to do that in accordance to what I talked about in an old YouTube video about busing it to a separate channel, so you can sort of play around with both layers of the pure reverb and the pure dry sound. So that was one thing that also sort of jumped out to me. If the drums were just a little bit more up front, that could have helped as well. But obviously, this beat was very, very impressive. So yeah, Netta says, yes, I want to go the composing route. Well, yeah, in that case, I think this beat does a very great job in that intention, if an artist wasn't meant to use this. But I do think the drums here are very they're very artist driven, in terms of like an artist would use. So with an epic sort of beat, a lot of those types of songs that are meant to be a little bit more orchestral, they don't really use traditional drums like with the snare and the kick. A lot of them use very like orchestral sounds, like what are they called, timpanis, and I'm not even 100% sure what they're actually all called, but very seldom do orchestral songs use very straightforward drums like you would hear when you download a drum pack and whatnot. So you might want to look into the percussive elements that are a little bit more common with orchestral music to fit that idea, because my critique on how loud and how upfront they were a little bit more based on if you wanted an artist to use this. So yeah, you might want to think about looking into the percussive elements that work with orchestral music a little bit more if you want to go down that road of composing. All right, my voice is pretty much shot, so let's do one more beat. Once again, thank you guys for joining in. This was a very fun competition, a little bit different than what we are used to here, because it is competitive as opposed to it being a normal challenge where we all just sit back and enjoy each other's beats. This one did have a more strict ranking, and obviously not everyone can win. But yeah, I sort of want you guys to get used to the idea that we are in a bit of a competition here. Yeah, it takes a lot of bravery to know that you are in competition and yet you're still going to try to join in and fight to a degree. So again, well done, and that alone is something that's commendable, because a lot of people chose not to join in, which again, it's fair. You might be a little bit busy, but I do really think it's important to put yourself out there, and even if you don't get the results that you want, like some of you guys may feel right now, being able to sort of pick up and continue on is really, really important. I'm going to do a complete huge segue here. There's a story that's really interesting to me that I heard a few weeks ago that I think is very, very important for you guys to hear. So I don't know if you guys know who James Lipton is. He's the guy who was the host of Inside the Actors Studio. He was this guy that was the head of like a acting school, and he would always interview big name actors and ask them about their roles and how they got into acting, blah, blah, blah. And when someone asked him who was the most impressive actor that they had ever come across, they asked James Lipton this question. Again, he's the head of an acting school. He said the best actors he'd ever seen were people who no one even knew about. They were people who were extremely talented. They were amazing actors. But as soon as they started to put themselves out there a little bit and sort of go down that road of like trying to actually make it in terms of the sort of more industry side, they would do these small little plays. And if someone was a little bit more critical of them, these people would end up getting crushed, and they just could not handle that emotion attached to being critiqued and actually putting yourself out there, and at times not getting the result that you want. He said a lot of these people who were just so amazing and skilled at what they do, they eventually stopped pursuing acting because they just could not handle that side of it. And I think I bring this up to say this, that this feeling that you might have right now of just being a little bit disappointed, a tiny bit, that you didn't get what you were hoping for, this is a necessary thing that you sort of need to get comfortable with. Because even for me, I mean, the small amount of placements that I got were from the result of like 2% of the beats I ever made. 98% of the beats people say no to, and 98% of the time I failed and got rejected. So I think this is a small little step forward for a lot of you guys of getting used to this feeling and pushing yourself and getting introduced to how it is and what you need to deal with if you do want to continue and actually make this something that you want to get serious with. These are things that you do need to get used to and get comfortable with. So yeah, short little segue there. That was just something that has been on my mind for a while, and I wanted to share it with you guys in hopes that it helps in some way. So let's do one last beat here. Let's do Be Real Beats. Here we go.
Be Real Beats.
All right, that was Be Real Beats there. Yeah. Let's see here. Looks and sounds real professional, says Margie. Thank you for coming, Caesar. That's such a vibe. Also, the look of the website is great. I can see this getting placed on big Spotify playlists like Chill Hop or Chilled Cow. I could hear this beat being used on an Overcast music video. What's Overcast? Say my takeaway with this beat, very well put together idea. I really like that vocal sample, and I think you did a good job of sort of using the different elements to fill up the beat, including that piano, the drums, the sort of drum pattern that you built. I do agree with Grout. There was a tiny bit of distortion there, but I don't think that it was like completely beat ruining. I think it still sounded fine to me. I think the one thing though, as my job as the person who's meant to push you, I did feel that the beat did eventually feel a bit repetitive. I would have liked to see a little bit more variation with the arrangement, just because that vocal sample and the sort of piano progression was the exact same. Even though I could definitely see an artist using this beat, and like Karasama said, this being placed, I would rather ensure that you make a simple repetitive beat like this because you choose to and not because you're limited by your own skill set. And so for that reason, I sort of do want to push you guys to be more audacious and push yourselves with your arrangement. And so you do have a larger skill set that you can choose to use if you want to, rather than being limited. So yeah, I think I just would have liked to seen a little bit more variation in the arrangement. And if that even goes towards like adding more elements in, maybe changing the underlying piano progression, maybe finding a complementary vocal sample that you can create a longer loop with. I did a video a little while back on how you can extend a short 1-bar loop into like a 4-bar loop by just adding small little details and changing things in a smaller way that eventually does contribute to a longer, more interesting sounding beat. But yeah, nonetheless, the core idea here that Be Real Beats made here was very, very good and very well put together. It's just the additional step of arranging is just something that I would have liked to have seen. And that brings us to the end of the competition. Once again, thank you guys. For the people who won, reach out to me. I'll get back to you, I'm thinking tomorrow, because like I mentioned, I do have something I have to do later today. So yeah, you'll get your prizes within a couple days. Thank you once again, everyone, for contributing. I'm going to put up the next challenge stipulations within the next couple of days as well. Yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. It's great to see your feedback. When are you announcing the next challenge? So yeah, it's going to be in a couple of days. The next competition will happen maybe sometime in the winter. And yeah, let me know if you guys have any feedback at all with this competition, things that you would have liked to see. I think a prize pool for the most progression in terms of where they came and where they are, that would be a cool idea. So maybe having like a section where you guys submit like the beats that how your beat used to sound to compared to where it is now, like a year later or something. That would be a cool idea maybe that we can do. But yeah, nonetheless, give me feedback on what you'd like to see. And yeah, also Karasama mentioned if you guys have any testimonials that you'd like to share for me to put on my website, that'd be very, very helpful as well. But yeah, other than that, thank you very much for joining in the fun, and I hope you did have fun, because I definitely did. And I will see you guys in 2 weeks